Hi, I'm Rob Patz.
And I'm Kristen Stanton.
And this is the Rob and Kristen Show. Welcome to another edition of the Rob and Kristen Show. We are back out in Studio D, as we like to call it, and getting to enjoy some late fall weather here in Ohio.
We're enjoying every last minute of the sunshine, the cooler temperatures, but not super cold temperatures. Now, I love the snow. I know you don't love the snow.
Well, I didn't come from a place of snow. But my wife did promise me snow when I moved here, and as of yet, no snow. Not snow of any. I want Armageddon type snow. I want it to be like, and we almost had that last year. They were so excited about this blizzard. I love the folks on Toledo Weather. They do a great job, but they were so excited. I mean, people were buying canned goods for like a year. They had a year's worth of chili beans, and it was going to be a 3-day.
No snow.
No snow. It was going to be a 3-day event. It turned into like an inch of snow. It was so disappointing.
Well, they're saying that we're supposed to have our first snow of the year here in a couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks from now, we'll supposedly get our first snow. We will keep you updated. Follow us on social media, by the way, so that you can find out things like that, some of the other behind the scenes stuff that goes on with the Rob and Kristen Show. You can find us on social media at the Rob and Kristen Show, plus also our personal social media. You can see what I have for dinner. That's usually what I post.
We post fun things about our cats. We post maybe some cooking things that we don't show otherwise, and some pictures from trips and things I'd never make it onto the show. But it's a lot of fun.
And one of the things I find super fun, because it's easy shows for me, are great interviews. And this week's killer interview is amazing. And it was like one of those that you went, wow. When it was over, it's like we had church.
It was really, truly amazing to sit down with the biblical historical fiction writer, Tessa Afshar. And I hope that you enjoy this interview as much as we did doing it.
It is that time of year again where we start thinking about Christmas, start thinking about things like that, and fall and all this fun stuff. And of course, that means it's a great time to read books. Of course, for Kristen,
it's always a great time to read a book. You don't have to have, a particular season to read a book. Now, I realize some people might like to read books more in the winter because they're not outside doing things. But hey, you know what? If you are looking for some new books, we have some for you. Put them on the list, buy them for Christmas presents, get your Christmas shopping done now. I think it's a great idea.
Plus, when the return of the big heads, that it's time for us to, I think we need to get t-shirts. I thought of this morning, Kristen. We need to get t-shirts that say the big heads, the Rob and Kristen Show.
Only you would think of something like that, Rob. Only you.
Go to abundanttv.com. You never know. You might find them there. abundanttv.com. Look for We're the Big Heads. I don't know. It's just things I think of. And it's so good. This is always fun. And it as I said before we came on air, I told the author, I said, I'm always fascinated by authors, because their mind just works different.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of these authors, like outside of knowing that they're authors, if they would talk about how they have hear voices in their head and people have carry on conversations, I would be worried. But they're some of the best authors we've talked to tell us that how my characters carry on a conversation in my head. And I just think it's so interesting.
See, I think if I would have fostered that, I would have been a great author, because I always made up, because when you're only child, you make up a lot of that stuff when you're alone.
But Rob, if you were an author, it would require you to actually do research and read things. And you don't like to read. So
but
how did you do that?
I could get the research idea because I have come up with a game for us. Our guest today has taught me a new game for this Christmas season for you and I. We are going to, and we may record this coming Christmas season. Uh,
Okay.
it's Christmas roll dueling. So it's like sword dueling. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, with the wrapping paper rolls?
Yes, yes.
And we're going to record that for the show.
I think we should. I think we should. And I'm excited for this guest to be with us today.
Where might you have come up with that idea, Rob?
From her. From her. She was there. She told me. See, so now what really needs to happen is you need to write the books, that you have one that you're working on. And I just want to say this, but I want to be like the research assistant and be able to do dueling with swords, and I could get into that.
Welcome, Tessa.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction, Rob. And now that everybody knows that I'm slightly crazy and that my husband and I duel with rolls of wrapping paper in order for me to get the scene right, because when you have two people sword fighting, you need to know, well, if someone is coming underneath the arm, like, does that really work, or is that just something I'm imagining? So I think we should start a new tradition where we're all roll fighting, as he said, because it's wrapping paper roll.
I actually think it would be kind of interesting. Give us your best screenshot, your best selfie or picture of you having a duel with the wrapping paper rolls, and we'll post it, on Abundant TV.
I think my hubby would probably faint if I put his image on.
I had to jump back in. Normally I don't, but I just wanted to say, on guard. Okay.
Exactly.
Oh, Tessa, it is so awesome to have you here on the Rob and Kristen Show. And as you can tell, my husband loves to joke around. So I love that. But I want to talk a little bit about, you've got a new book that's getting ready to come out. It's called The Royal Artisan. It's beautiful cover, by the way. Beautiful. So tell me a little bit about the book, but tell me a little bit about you, because our viewers, if they don't know anything about you, help them get to know who you are and what your books are really about.
Oh, absolutely. So this is a book that's set in the time of Queen Esther. That's all I'm going to say about the book at the beginning. And then I'm going to jump about me, because once I tell you about me, you'll understand why the book. I was born in the Middle East. I was born in the same land where Esther was queen. And that's where I grew up for the first 14 years of my life. I grew up in a nominally Muslim family. And we believed in God, but my parents didn't really practice the 5 tenets of Islam. And like, my mom didn't wear a hijab, and they didn't pray 5 times a day, that sort of thing. And it wasn't until when I was 13, my parents were divorced, and my mom, my sister, and I moved out of the Middle East, and I started attending a boarding school for girls in England. And when I was there, it wasn't a Christian school, but it was very traditional. Boarding schools are very traditional. And we were told on Sundays we had to go to church, and those of us who were from a different faith background, we were told, sit upstairs in the balcony and read your books of faith, which for me would have been the Quran, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Quran is written in Arabic, and I didn't speak Arabic. And also for Christians, we believe the Bible is one of the primary ways we connect with God, one of the primary ways he speaks to us. But the Quran doesn't work like that. And so, I was like, if I were to read it in a different translation, even if I could get my hands on one, it doesn't really do much for you. You have to read it in the original language for it to have any faith. Anyway, so I reasoned with myself that I should at least be obedient and read upstairs in church. So I did romance novels.
Hey,
uh,
that sounds reasonable, right? You needed to read something.
when I was in my 20s, I finally discovered that the Bible is, in a way, a romance novel. It's a romance between God and us, and it's God pursuing us. It's God never giving up on us. There's a lot of elements of romance and all the things that I loved. But at the time, I was just reading like regular old romance novels in church, and so I didn't hear the gospel until I was in my 20s, and that's when I became a Christian. As a Christian, I started reading the Bible for the first time, and I read these books based in the Persian era. So, like Book of Nehemiah, the Book of Esther, all these stories that named the Persian kings, but all of these kings I had heard about in my childhood when I went to school. I studied history, but I had never heard about Esther because Esther is only mentioned in the Bible. And so I always knew I wanted to write a book sort of surrounding Esther, but so many people have written her story or even there are movies about it that I wanted to take a different direction. So I decided to write, there's actually a 3-book series that we've done. So Esther is a support character. She's someone who comes alongside 3 young women who become her friends, and they sort of help each other during Esther's life. And for those of you who are not familiar with Esther's story, perhaps the verse that everybody is familiar with more than any is when Mordecai says to Esther, "Who knows, but perhaps you were brought to royal position for such a time as this." And I wanted to kind of, in the context of that verse, understand what that verse was all about. And so I gave these 3 women in these 3 books kind of interesting jobs, and I wanted to introduce everybody to the world of the Bible in the Persian era.
I love that. So when you really were introduced to God, how did that change just your perspective on life?
I think for me, there were certain things that changed almost immediately when I became a Christian. There were certain things that the Lord took away from me that were worldly, and there were certain things that were really a long process, and I had to uh, basically walk through with Jesus. Like one of those things was that my parents' divorce had left some wounds in me, and then when I was 21, I got married before I became a Christian. I got married and I made this vow, which had a lot of power, but I wasn't aware of it. And the vow was, I will never divorce. And I remember saying as a 14-year-old kid, even if I marry the devil himself, I will never divorce. And so, of course, I married someone who got tired of being married and he wanted to divorce. And there was nothing I could do to
Right.
change his mind, and that became basically that vow got broken, which the way my soul understood it was this is the greatest failure I could ever have experienced. So now I had 3 generations of divorce because my grandparents were divorced, 3 generations of divorce running through me, and the wounds of that divorce were really significant. And I remember one night, after many years of being a Christian, saying to Jesus, Lord, I really need you to heal me. This still shows up, that the wounds of this rejection still show up in my life in different ways. And I had this picture, God gave me this very gracious picture where I saw a diamond ring in the sand. Someone had dropped it. People had walked over it because they hadn't seen it. They hadn't recognized it. And it was all dented and dirty. And I felt like God was saying, pick that up. And I picked it up and he said, is that garbage? Because people have walked on it. And I was like, no, God, like it's gold, it's
Mhm.
diamond, it's really a jewel. And God said, but it's dented. I said, I'll straighten it. He said, it's dirty. I said, I'll wash it. He said, you're my diamond ring.
Oh, wow.
You're my diamond ring. And that was my moment of healing. And that story, I changed it to a pearl because back then they didn't have a diamond. But that story went into my first novel, Pearl in the Sand, which is about Rahab's story, because Rahab started her story that we recognize her for. She
Mhm.
started life as a prostitute. So how does someone come with those wounds? How do you feel? You feel like an abandoned jewel, but you're still a jewel in God's eyes. And that story of how God puts that message into our spiritual DNA after those kinds of wounds.
So interesting. So tell us about your journey of becoming an author. I mean, was this something that you'd always wanted to do, or something that after you became a Christian, God said, "Oh, by the way, here's your calling, and I've created you for such a time as this"?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I always knew when I was a kid that this was something that I had been gifted with, that, and I loved doing. I loved reading, and next to reading, I loved writing stories, making up stories. And I think that I would have just done that from the beginning if I had lived a Christian life and heard from God. But two things happened. One was that my whole culture, school system, and family system basically said this is not practical and you should do something that's very practical.
Mhm.
So you can do this sort of for fun on the side, but don't ever take it seriously. You are never going to be good enough to do this for a living. And the second thing was that I had that wound of rejection. And so I was very afraid of failure. So I would start stories and I would never finish them because a voice in my head would say, it's not good enough. This, nobody will want to read this. Like, this is boring, or people will write much better than this. So I would start, dozens of stories and never finish, until one year I was praying about it. I was like, Lord, this is the desire of my heart. And I had this sense of, you better finish a story this year. And the only reason I finished that story was out of obedience, not out of self confidence.
Mhm.
And every time I would doubt myself and I would doubt the story, I would say, but I promised Jesus that I would do this. So I finished that story out of obedience. That story went on to be my first novel. It was published, I think it's now in 8 languages, maybe. So just goes to say, not every voice you hear in your head is accurate or right.
I think you've described a battle that I think a lot of people have, just because, and I know I've been there too. As a songwriter, before I released my first CD, I was like, oh, I don't want to share these songs because what if everybody hates them? The first time that I got up to sing, it was it was that anticipation of rejection, because the voice does play inside your head that, oh, they're not going to like this. Oh, this is different than what other people are doing. There are other people who are more talented than you. Who are you to, all of those same conversations. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, because I think we've all been there at some point in time where, we have something that God wants us to do. And we have to make the decision of whether we're going to be obedient and walk through the anticipation of the fear and rejection instead of what it actually may be. And we just have this, always have this anticipation of the worst instead of the anticipation of the best. But we have that. That's our decision. It's our decision of whether we're going to be obedient or not be obedient. And I'm so thankful that you decided to be obedient. So I would love to know a little bit about, how do you come up with the ideas as far as creating the characters? Because you said, hey, I'm creating some support characters, and here's the book right now. Is I can't get over this cover. It's just stunning. They do such a great job on their cover art. But how do you create the characters for these stories? Because I mean, you're writing from a completely different perspective than a lot of people are writing. So how do you make sure that the information that you're putting into your book is period accurate, I guess?
I think those are great questions. For me, I don't have a formula on how do I come up with the characters. Once I come up with the period or a storyline, uh, things fall into place because I realized. So, for example, with this particular character, Sazana, I knew that she was pretending to be just like, Sazana is a Persian name. So she's Jewish. She's born as Shoshana, and now she's pretending to be Sazana. She works in a pottery workshop, and she's very talented. But what does that mean when you live your life as something you're not? When you live your life out of fear as something you're not? You're wearing a mask. So And I also know that her parents are dead. They died, traumatically when she was 11. And so, what are the wounds that come into your life when you are orphaned in that sense? So, when you are now facing these new challenges, and there are layers of challenges that she has to face. One is the owner of that workshop is Haman who hates Jews, and that's partly why she has had to, live undercover, so to speak. The second part is that someone's trying to kill her. They're trying to figure out why. And the third part is that the person that the queen assigns to the workshop, because after Haman is killed, the king gives that workshop to the queen as a gift. So the man that the king assigns to her well-being to protect her is none other than the man who basically broke their uh, engagement, betrothal 5 years earlier. So this is the second chance, that love story. But I put all of these pieces together and I think, here's someone who has these wounds. How would she respond? How would she react? Now, I think a lot of us have the wound of, like, we still have our parents. We never went through that kind of loss as she did, but we still know what it's like to live as orphans spiritually, because we don't trust God the Father to father us, to protect us, to provide for us, to be there through things for us. So what do? We try to provide for ourselves. We try to protect ourselves. When you have an orphan wound, you tend to have a lot of anxiety, or the opposite. You turn to become very controlling, and it has to be your way in order for you to feel protected, all because you're acting as if God isn't your father. You're all by yourself and it's all up to you. So I have that orphan wound running through this book, and my hope is that folks who read it will recognize, oh, there's a part of my heart that has this, and oh, I can trust God with this. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's so interesting that you're saying these things, because Rob and I were just talking about this the other day, not using the phrasing that you used about the orphan mentality, because I never thought about that like that before, but we were just talking about that, about why is it that we feel like we need to answer our own prayers? Why is it that we feel like when we ask God to help us do something, that we can't just sit back and just trust that the answer that God gave us is the best answer, instead of fighting God on the answer, maybe on certain things of, well, I thought, God, that you would answer it this way. And when you didn't answer it this way, I'm upset because I don't feel like this is the best answer. And it's like, why do we do this? Why do we do all of this stuff and feel like, or financially, hey, I need financial breakthrough of some kind, but I can't really depend upon God to do that, so I've got to go figure out A, B, C, D, E, F and keep going in case any of those things don't work. And I just feel like this is something that a lot of people struggle with, so I'm so glad that you brought it up. And I'm assuming that that's kind of the one. I mean, obviously this is a great book, and there's all of those elements in it that make you want to pick the book up. But I'm assuming that this is your takeaway from the book, one of the things that you want readers to walk away with.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the main takeaways that's there. There are a few other threads there as well, but it's this is kind of, honestly, I write books that have some adventure, they have romance. I want you to be entertained, but I want you, by the time you close this book and set it aside, I want you to feel like, I feel closer to God. I feel closer to peace. I feel encouraged in the depth of my being. I don't know why, but I feel that way.
Mhm.
And this book is the second book in the series. So in the first book, you hear more from Esther, and you hear sort of her background. Uh, that connects with this, because if you remember that word that Mordecai gives to Esther, perhaps you were put in royal position for such a time as this. If you read it in context, it's not an encouragement. It's not a, well done, Esther, God is coming to you in the time. No, it's like it's like a little slap on the back of Esther's hand, because Mordecai has said, our people need you. Please go and intercede on behalf of the king for us. And Esther's response is, well, the king has not sent for me in 30 days. And everybody knows that if I go without his being sent for, I'm going to die. And basically what she's saying is, Mordecai, I can't go because he hasn't sent for me in 30 days. He doesn't want me. And he's not going to want me. He'll never send for me. So if I go, he's just going to kill me. So she's come to her own conclusion. And Mordecai is saying, listen, your eyes are on the past 30 days of your life. You are looking at your life through that lens, the 30 days of being rejected, the 30 days of being unwanted, the 30 days where your marriage has been terrible. And so you are coming to every conclusion like that orphan 30 days, that he's not with you for those 30 days. But I will tell you that God's such a time as this will trump your 30 days, your 30 months, your 30 years. And that sense of basically the thing that I want people to take away from these books, and I'm building on with each book, is the idea that God is with us. He knows the challenges we are facing. He knows the conclusions we are reaching and how those conclusions make every sense in the world, but they are absolutely wrong. And he wants us to learn in the midst of the hardship, in the midst of the challenge, he wants us to learn that God's presence, God's plan, God's intention, God's timing will always trump whatever conclusion we're reaching.
That's awesome. Oh, Rob, here's Rob. He's got a smile on his face, and he's got that grin that means that there's something coming that I'm going to laugh at.
So before we close this interview, which has been an amazing interview, have you ever written any of your husband's traits into any of the male characters in your book? Because that's what I was back there thinking.
Well, we have a lawyer here. Can I take the fifth on that?
You can. And that's perfectly fine. Because trust me, I do it a lot. So I also tell her, don't look at me with the lawyer face, which scares me. That face. We were negotiating a new vehicle, and she put the lawyer face on, and I left the office. So that tells.
I don't have a lawyer face.
He does.
Apparently you do. You just don't know it. No, but yes, definitely there are moments when you will come across the hero doing something really brilliant or loving or strong, and those are things inspired by my sweet hubby.
Aww. I love that.
Thank you so much for being with us here on the Rob and Kristen Show. We appreciate you so very much.
I appreciate you. It's been fun.
I know I told you ahead of time that this was going to be an incredible interview, and it was. It was like going to church.
It really was amazing. And to be honest with you, we really had no idea where this interview was going to take us, but it really truly was a remarkable time.
What an incredible author. Neat book that is out right now.
The Royal Artisan. It is part of Queen Esther's court. So if you love the biblical historical fiction, make sure you go pick up a copy. It was great. I just enjoyed that interview so much because, well, I didn't have to be a part of it. No, that was it. That wasn't it. It was so much fun. And we just enjoy getting a chance to work with authors like this. And we want to tell you this from Kristen and I: go out and live an abundant life.